Welcome back, guys. So today I want to take a look at what I thought was a pretty cool two-player arcade machine. Has a Pandora box 3D in it with 2,448 games, including around 130 3D games, very similar to the Pandora box 18S 3D that we recently took a look at. That was just a two-player panel. This is a machine. Now, the one cool thing with this is it does have a coin acceptor, so you can charge people to play your games. I mean, are they your games? This is gray area type stuff. I mean, it ain't gray area. We know what it is. It's Soulja Boy type stuff going on here. So here's the back of the machine. Now, you do have some ports back here. You can plug in external controllers, plug in another monitor through HDMI, little headphone jack, 3.5 millimeter jack, a few little things there, configuration button to get into the config menu, and a volume slider for the included speaker that's on the bottom here. It's actually on the bottom front. Now this thing, the plastic casing that it uses, it reminds me of like those really cheap, like holiday decorations that you get at like the dollar store. I don't know how to explain it, but I mean, it feels sturdy enough. It does have some blemishes on this plastic, which is not a huge deal, but I do have some concerns. Now, before we get into testing everything, I do want to show the coin acceptor here because a lot of people don't understand how these things work. Now, with these cheap ones, and in all honesty, the unit that I bought here, the coin acceptor did not work. It wouldn't receive power. It was defective. But you can buy replacements. These cheap ones, they're about $15 each. I already had one that was pretty much identical to the one that was included, and I plugged it in and it works just fine. Now, with these little cheapies, a lot of them are pretty similar. In order to accept coins, you have to set it up to accept coins because it's kind of cool. You can have it take certain tokens or quarters or whatever, you know, currency could be a little different. So you pop this little bish up right here and you slide in a quarter or whatever you want to accept, right? Whatever you want to charge people on this thing. I mean, do people really use the coin acceptor on these things? I don't know. I mean, maybe in other countries like in China, maybe. I don't know. Do people pay to play this thing? Are these used in arcades or I don't understand it, but it is kind of neat. I mean, you can charge your kids or friends. Like, you want to play this? Pop in a quarter, fool. There's a bunch of different ways you could set it up with the coins as well, like to, you know, two coins for one credit, that kind of thing. Add certain amount of time for timed games because console type games do require time, whereas arcade games, it is, you know, credits. So pretty simple stuff, but really neat that this is included for, you know, this whole machine here. You know, overall this thing goes for around $300 shipped within the US. You know, some Chinese sellers do have this out in warehouses in the US and they ship them fairly quick. I ordered this one, paid around the $300 price point, you know, haggled a little and got it within a few days. So that was kind of cool, but not just with this coin acceptor not working. That wasn't my first issue. Like I said, I did replace it with pretty much the same identical one. You can find these on Amazon for like $10 to $15. But my other concerns, not so much the plastic. Like I said, it is kind of cheap, but it's sturdy, it works. But really my concerns are the display. And I've reached out to these guys about it. My display, the monitor, it is a 19-inch monitor. This thing is pretty big. When you really look at it, I mean, it's a Bartop. It's not huge, but it's about 20.5 inches tall, about 21 inches from front to back, and then almost 20 inches wide. So you got to keep that in mind. Two big-ass dudes aren't going to play this thing next to each other, but, I mean, you kind of can. I'm a big-ass dude, and I kind of imagined having somebody next to me, and it seems like it would work if you're kind of to the side. But my issue is this display that is used here. I have wavy lines going through it that no matter what you do, like I've double checked everything, made sure all the cables were plugged in the Pandora box that's inside this unit. But I just been having this issue. I did have to plug in the power cable to the front button when I first got this thing. So I did have to take off the front panel and plug that in. But I was told, oh, it's probably a loose wire, but it's not. It's just something with the power not working properly with everything attached to it, the Pandora box and the display. The power draw is messing something up where there's some distortions here. Because if I'm like playing a game that I'm pressing a bunch of buttons, it'll make more distortion. If the game all of a sudden has a lot of sound, boom, you get a bunch of distortion, that kind of thing. I don't know if everybody has this problem who gets one of these, but I did want to point that out on the unit that I received. The display, the monitor's just not great as far as that goes. Sometimes it's not as noticeable depending on what you're playing. I noticed if you turn the volume down really low, it won't do that so much. I mean, it'll still be there no matter what. Like if the volume's all the way down or nothing is playing, like, yeah, the distortion kind of settles down a little bit, but you know, it's still there no matter what. But playing games on this thing, it's just like most of the other Pandora boxes that are out there right now, like the previous one that I took a look at. I highly recommend taking a look at that video. I thought that one was pretty cool, you know, for what it is. With this one, it's very similar to the previous one I looked at, just has less games. The same thing. Some Dreamcast games play fine, some have glitches. Nintendo 64, some games are fine, some have glitches. If you're playing console games, they all run fairly well. You know, input latency with the control panel doesn't feel too bad to me. I can't really play most console games like Super Mario Bros. I can't really play that game with an arcade stick, but it does feel okay as far as latency goes. Playing fighting games, I'm not really having too much of an issue there. So just wanted to point that out. Everything plays for the most part fine, but the other issue with this being stuck on this, you know, size display, not having the widescreen layout to where you can manipulate the aspect ratio, some games are just not gonna look right. Dreamcast games are gonna be squished. Vertical games are gonna be squished. Unless they're just expanded, some games, you know, they'll be running through MAME or FBA, and depending on how you play it, which emulator, you know, you're using, which version of the game, it'll be stretched out and it won't look right, like Donkey Kong. Then the other thing with Donkey Kong, for example, is the sound samples are not in there, so the game doesn't sound correct because you're missing the little samples from that game. Now, the other thing I've noticed playing some games, I'm you know, that I'm really familiar with, like Snow Bros, the audio's not correct, so it's kind of hit and miss. You know what I mean? It's not perfect, but it's not horrible at the same time. The one nice thing with this is, yeah, you can hit that config button on the back and go through a bunch of different options, set up how you want the coins to be accepted, or if you want it on free play, set up controller configs, that kind of thing. You do have where you can factory reset everything, all that nice stuff, little account management nonsense. And then you can also edit the game list. And you could delete stuff if you want. It is recoverable. Now, the one thing that I like is that you could hide games, or you can favorite games, or both, right? So hiding games just hides them from the main list. So you can dwindle it down to just the games you want to display, that you want to have access to. And if you want, you could just start deleting stuff. And that brings me to the next thing. This does have Wi-Fi, so you can connect to the internet, go to their little free marketplace, right, and download some ROMs and start adding things that you want on the system. I didn't delete anything that had 1.2 gigs of space left to download games, which is plenty for a lot of these older arcade games and a lot of console games, so that's fine. But if you needed to make room, you could delete some nonsense like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 that doesn't run properly on the Dreamcast and free up a little bit of space and download something else. If you want to see more of what this thing is capable of, take a look at my 18S video, because it's pretty much identical as far as the performance goes. I really wanted to like this thing, but with just the way the display looks and, you know, receiving it with the coin acceptor not working, you know, for around $300, I would probably stick to, you know, putting together something myself and using a Raspberry Pi, or, you know, even like a Mister, setting something up a little more premium, a little more crazy, put a PC in there. I mean, the options are endless. I always like the 2-player Bartops from Game Room Solutions, so that's always something you could take a look at. This thing is cool, but, you know, quality control issues are always a little snag for me with these types of things. So there you go. Really do appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Let me know what you think. Drop a comment down below. And with that said, I will catch y'all next time. Peace out, bye-bye, and boom. Bye!